Hey, it's my daughter's birthday this weekend, and I've got to run into central LA to a particular bakery and pick up some cupcakes and things for the birthday party. Perfect opportunity to continue my conversation about lane splitting in California. This will be the more advanced lessons and those advanced techniques that I use to stay healthy doing this here in California and having done it for many years and tens of thousands of miles. So we'll get into that right now. Welcome to Urban Monk TV. Okay, so before I get into it, I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers with this channel, guys, and I would love your help. I'm really close. You know, 10,000 subscribers for me is a lot, and this is never going to be a million subscriber channel, right? Too niche. But I could use your help, and I would appreciate it very much if you like what's going on here. Subscribe and hit that like button. Also, if you love motorcycling and particularly cafe racers, but even if you just like a story about motorcycles, urbanmonktv.com or Amazon, you can find my book, Creating Mr. Corton. Check it out. So, I got to go into Erin McKenna's gluten-free bakery. My daughters are gluten-free. Frankly, I prefer to eat that way too. It makes me feel better when I do. But, great opportunity. Got to get into LA. It's Friday. It's busy out there. We're going to see plenty of real Los Angeles County, California lane splitting action here. And while we do it, I'm going to talk about what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. This is the third part in a series on lane splitting. I believe it'll be the final part. And I'm going to overdub my thoughts and comments on top of footage here that I'm going to grab while I'm riding. I'm going to say right now, this is advanced technique number one. I have the ability to record my voice while I'm riding, you know, in the helmet. I can put a microphone in my helmet and do that. I'm not doing that on this video for a reason. So here you go. Tip number one for lane splitting. Don't listen to music. Don't do anything that ties up any of your mental bandwidth. You got to be focused if you're going to be lane splitting. And so I've been saying you a lot. This is me, right? This is what I do. Take it or leave it. You know, I don't recommend lane splitting for everybody. I'll talk about that later on in this video. But why am I doing the overdubs? Because I can't be worrying about you know, the mental synapses being tied up with making words come out of my mouth. 100% of my brain is on the ride, is on traffic, is on the task at hand. I don't do like Bluetooth phone calls in my helmet. You know, that's not for lane splitting. All your focus, all your attention on the ride. So there's tip number one. Let's get into the rest of it. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, why is he sitting behind the drums if we're going to be talking about lane splitting? I want to use this as an analogy for talking about riding skills and sorry, these chimes are making noise. Who should be lane splitting and riding at kind of the limits of safety? Who can handle riding in basic traffic versus heavy traffic versus lane splitting, which I would put in a whole nother advanced category, right? And when it comes to operating a machine like a motorcycle, a couple things come into play when you have a human being interacting with a machine like this. And that's, you know, dexterity, motor skills, coordination, that type of thing. And so I am someone who, I'm just going to use myself as an example because one, this channel is kind of a one-man band, right? And two, I've been lane splitting for tens of thousands of miles and successful. And I've been riding motorcycles since I was 12 years old, but not on the streets until I was 16. And even when I was riding on the streets at 16, it was in a smaller city, not a big metropolis like Los Angeles, right? And so my development in riding went through stages, right? The point here being that I am someone who, with time and practice, can coordinate my body to do things that other people find complicated or difficult. And it's not like they're easy for me right out of the gate, but I can do it if I practice, and I have practiced riding motorcycles a lot. Another thing I've spent a lot of time practicing is playing drums. I've just got a lifetime of doing both, right? So as an analogy for who should be lane splitting versus who might not want to do it quite yet, let's compare a novice motorcycle rider with my daughter, who is a very accomplished musician on guitar, but she has less time in playing drums. And, behind the kit, there's just significantly fewer hours on her part than my part. And, flip that around, I can't play guitar at all, hardly. And she's really good, right? More hours, more practice, better coordination, or not that her coordination is better than mine, it's just she spent more time with it. I've spent more time riding motorcycle than someone who has spent less time. So, am I a candidate for lane splitting? I would argue I am. Here's same beat, two different people at two different levels of practice with this thing. This beat is called the Purdy Shuffle. You may hear it in Steely Dan, Babylon Sisters. This is kind of an aside, it has nothing to do with motorcycling. You hear it in Led Zeppelin, Fool in the Rain. You hear it in Toto, Rosanna, at different tempos and with modifications, but that's the beat. So here's a little example of me playing that versus my daughter playing it. We'll start with my daughter. That's pretty. Get it? I did, yes, thank you.
Okay.
How long have you been practicing that beat?
A year on and off.
Yeah, like how many total hours do you think?
Like 4.
Okay. And now, I'll give it a swing. Same beat, Purdy Shuffle. It's named after Bernard Purdy. Look him up. So there you go, right? Which one of us should be doing riskier things that require motor skills? Now, if my daughter had a machine hooked to her guitar, that if she deviated from some kind of standard of playing, that she would be hurt, I'd be more comfortable with her interacting with that than me. So there you go. A little bit about what level of your riding skills should you be at to be doing something like this. And if you have them and you're that kind of rider, and there's many people that are, and hey, there's many people that can play drums as good or better than me, then this is for us, right? And we may as well do it. It helps with congestion, and it helps us get places, and it reduces risk for us in some cases. Another couple habits that I tend to exhibit when I'm riding that I think play a role in my longevity as a rider are when there are cars near me. Like the more traffic around me, the more both my hands are on the handlebars. Yes, there are times where a guy wants to stretch, maybe twist his back a little bit, or just move around some and relax an arm. And you might go cruising along with one hand on the handlebars, but not when there's lots of cars around me. As traffic thickens, my hands are on the bars. And even if I wave to someone to acknowledge that they've moved over or given me space, I often will just pivot my hand out while keeping the palm of my hand still on the handlebar so that if I have to put it back on and grab the clutch lever, it's right there. It's not fully removed from the handlebar, with space like a foot or two between my hand and the handlebar. It goes immediately up. And that contact is there, so it's just a quick pivot. Another thing too is as I get into lane splitting or cars really close to me for whatever reason, I always have two fingers covering the front brake and my right toes covering the rear brake. Doesn't mean I'm dragging on the brakes, but they are right there. Here you can see on my glove how often I do this, as evidenced by those two fingers. The leather on the glove is just shiny and worn from where it's always on that aluminum handle. I'm covering the brakes a lot, and those microseconds that buys me in reaction time, I think are part of the reason I'm here. It's all about being fast with response. And by the time my brain thinks about it and sends a signal to the muscles in my hands and arms and feet, which, by the way, only travels at about 300 miles per hour, which is super slow for like an electrical impulse, right? But in our bodies, the distance is so short that 300 miles an hour is pretty instant. But it is way slower than electricity and way slower than sound even. Just a interesting tidbit there. One of the most important facets of writing at this level is focus, or watching. And what I mean by that is when I say watching, I mean what my eyes and my brain are focused on. Not just like what am I looking at, but what am I processing with my brain? And the short answer is I like to say that I watch nothing and everything. I am not focusing on any particular one thing or moving object. I may be putting my eyes in different places, but my brain is watching all of it. Um, it's a skill that takes a little while to develop. I think playing hockey as a kid may have helped me, and it may be true for just about any team sport where there's a lot of players and a lot of action and a ball, or in the case of hockey, a puck moving around, and there's just constant motion. I think it was good brain training as a younger person for the ability to do this. Or just going to open skate, right? Where you got little kids that are doing all kinds of crazy things on the ice, and you get used to avoiding them. But the key is if you put your complete focus and you're watching one thing, well, then something else might be happening that could be risky to you. And if you're not watching everything, like looking up the middle between the cars, there might be a folding chair or a ladder that's fallen off a truck or some other object in that path. But at the same time I'm seeing that, there also might be somebody moving into my lane. You got to watch both of those things and maybe even a third thing and just react to them without putting your mental focus on any one particular thing. Another way of thinking about lane splitting that I'll categorize as a more advanced concept is I've mentioned in previous videos about the management of risk, how when I'm lane splitting, and frankly when I'm just riding in traffic in general, I'm constantly assessing risk, and it's a very fluid kind of exercise where I'm recognizing moments where risk is lower and I'm recognizing moments where risk is higher. And one of the things you might find counterintuitive is that when there is a gap in traffic, the cars tend to want to fill the gaps. They think they can get where they're going faster if they get in that gap. Maybe this other lane's going quicker. So where there are gaps, there's a lot of lane changing. And motorcyclists, I've heard it said more than once that they like this idea of threading the needle between cars that are staggered because it isn't really a lane split. It's more of just changing lanes a lot in between the gaps. But the problem in my mind with that is that those drivers don't know you're there because you're small and they want to fill those gaps. So the likelihood of them changing lanes and coming over is actually higher under that situation. Where I find the lower risk, not risk-free, but a lower level of risk, is when two cars are side by side, which visually looks like it's a higher risk situation. There's a little narrow gap in there, and either one of them coming over will just squish you like a sandwich, right? But the truth is, cars tend to know when other cars are there. They don't know when motorcycles are there, but they do know when cars are there. Tend to, I'll put that caveat there. None of this is 100%, right? This is just assessing risk. And at no point is risk ever zero here. But I find two cars side by side to be a lower risk situation. And as long as the gap is big enough, I tend to go for it there. Whereas I may be a little bit more cautious when they're staggered because that car may come over into the gap that's there. So this next one isn't exactly an advanced tip, but it's a tip that I think has kept me safe for a long time, and I think it's really worth mentioning here in this video. One of the realities of our modern world is the number of people who are driving motor vehicles and on their phone at the same time is way up. It's way higher than it used to be in the past. It's just a fact. So one of the number one things that comes out of that from people on their phones is the number of cars being rear-ended or motorcyclists being rear-ended. Your risk of being rear-ended is higher today than it was, say, when I was younger and prior to cell phones. At least that's the argument I would make. And what I can say is that if you choose to filter to the front at every opportunity, red lights mostly, right? If that car behind you happens to be that driver who's on his phone and isn't slowing down as he should and rear ends the stop traffic at that light, well, at least you're up at the front and not at the back with another car or vehicle right in front of you so that you get sandwiched. You're up at the front. So it puts a barrier or a distance up there. And frankly, I think it makes motorcycling exponentially safer than it used to be. Okay, so that's it. That's my whole series on lane splitting. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. Again, if you like motorcycling, I've been told that I wrote a pretty decent book here. That's not my opinion. That's what other people are saying. Creating Mr. Corton on urbanmonktv.com. Thanks so much. If you like what I'm doing here, please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to become an urban monk. Thanks for watching.